Hello. Here we are on Facebook. So we are waiting for Elyrria Swann to join us. We were trying to join on Instagram and it was being some sort of way with us. So we ditched Instagram and came over to Facebook. And here we are. So we'll give everyone a minute to hop on over and then we can get it going here. I'm trying to see. Let's see. I don't get to play with the buttons on Facebook very often, so yeah, let's see what we got here. We're trying to go live on Instagram, and it was being some sort of way. Let's see, approve. Bring them on camera. Why do you want me? Yeah, I want Elg on the camera. Okay, it says it's adding. Connecting. There she is!
Can you see me? Hear me? Everything's good?
I can see you. Can you see me good? Yeah?
Yes, everything's perfect. I'm on my phone now. I don't know what the heck happened, but I'm glad we figured it out.
Yeah, and it's like Instagram, it's like a 5-year-old. So sometimes it throws hissy fits and I'm like, okay, bye, off to Facebook we go.
Exactly. And I never use Instagram, so I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right. See, there's always a backup plan, so it's totally fine. But anyway,
We figured it out.
How you doing?
Amazing. It's so good to see you.
Yes, I know. It's finally good to meet you. I know we've been chatting for a little bit through email. So let me just go ahead and introduce you. Hi, everyone. This is Jen from The Cartomancer, and today we have Elyrria Swann, and she is the author of the new book, How to Become a Mermaid. And I was almost I sat down, I was like getting ready to go, and I left this book upstairs because I've been reading it. And I was like, oh, crap, I have to go get the book. So I ran and grabbed it. But yeah, and so you live in Sedona, right? And you're a mermaid. You have been, kind of channeling your mermaidness since a young girl. So why don't you tell us your start of mermaiding story?
Yeah, so when I say that I'm a mermaid, what I mean by that is that I just have an aura that's made of water. So we have astral mermaids that reside on the spiritual plane, and then occasionally we have mermaids who choose to come to Earth and walk it in human form. So that would be me. So growing up, of course, I grew up in a fundamentalist family. I didn't know a lot about spirituality. I knew nothing about mermaids at all. But mermaids started coming to me, funny enough, while I was in the bathtub, actually. And they would talk to me, and exactly, they find their ways. And we would connect, mostly psychically, I would say, claircognizant. I could see them as well. And we would just sort of talk. And I thought I was nuts, honestly. I mean, I was a little kid, so, you have a big imagination. You have imaginary friends sometimes, but this was so real. It's like, I can't deny that this is happening. And it carried through until adulthood. So when I was little, it was like they were kind of letting me know that this was a part of my mission, touching base. I feel like in some ways they sort of parented me because my parents weren't super nurturing, so they were there for me in a way that others weren't. And then as I got older, we really connected more with my mission to make humans and other beings on this planet aware of the mermaid realm, and also just to protect the watery ecosystems of planet Earth.
Right. Yeah, which, is so important. And I do feel like that's definitely getting a little bit better. Like people are becoming a little bit more aware of that. So, and that's, completely awesome. I live in upstate New York, and we have a large lake, Lake George. It's very popular, but so we are really big on, conservation and the boating on there and all of that. And that's, I live in the Adirondack forest. So really just all of it here is like, it's such a big thing for us too. So I'm definitely could get on board with that. So as far as like when you were seeing those, seeing or hearing the mermaids at first, how did they look like for you? Because I do feel like they kind of look a little different for everybody. So how did they look for you?
Yeah, so they appear in a way that makes sense to us. So when I was really little, sometimes they would appear with tails and scales and, what we would think
Mhm.
of as a mermaid. But as I got older, they basically appear in human form, humanoid form with legs, because they don't truly need tails
Right.
to navigate the mermaid realm. It's a spiritual place, but they just look that way so that we know how to recognize them. But as I got older, I didn't really need that. So they did appear
Mhm.
as human women, but they're like many, many more times magnetic. So human women can be absolutely stunning and beautiful, but the mermaids take it to a whole new level. The males or maybe non-binary or genderless also included in that. They just all have this incredible intrinsic
Right.
magnetism that just makes you feel pulled to them. And of course, they are aesthetically pleasing. They're really gorgeous beings.
Right, right. And that probably could be overwhelming for some people, right?
Yes, and it's really perceptive that you said that because in meditation, there's a lot of protective measures that occultists and magicians and, just what would you call them? Spiritual adepts like to take to protect themselves. Not because a
Right.
mermaid is like a siren, they're not going to take you and pull you out to sea, but humans, and I'm including all of us in that, myself as well, me as well. We tend to be drawn toward things that make us feel good, sugar, things that give us a
Yes.
dopamine release, the reward. It's why we
Totally.
like video games and finishing books and all
Yep.
the goodies like that. So when we get near a mermaid who's like this, I don't
Right.
know, a cocaine high, we're just like, oh my goodness, I don't want this to end. And a lot of people can neglect their physical body, or they can spend way too much time in the astral realm, which can also be really, really cold. And that
Right.
does not always bode well for the
Mhm.
physical form. So you might want to do a meditation, make sure that you're in balance. You can start with a basic chakra balancing, and then more advanced adepts who spend longer amounts of time will often kind of create a buffer for their aura, or they'll do like a bit of a shield, not from the
Right.
mermaids, but kind of like this safeguard that says, okay, when this starts to feel a little too addictive, I need to pull back just a bit so that I don't abandon my human life and, lose everything that I worked for.
Right. And you're there just freezing and wasting away because you're too busy running around over in this other realm. No, and I think
Exactly.
it is so, so important. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, we see this a lot. It's not always that it's so dramatic, like, oh, you're just going to die in your armchair. It's that sometimes people just get really
Right,
ungrounded.
right, right.
I think we've all done that. I've definitely been guilty of it. And it's just where we get so involved in like a special interest or something that really makes us feel like we're at home, where we can neglect things that we need to be focusing on. We're humans, so we have to achieve balance in a way that elementals don't.
Right. Yeah, because they don't really have to worry about that because it's just like a constant flow for them. Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. So for somebody who would like to start working with mermaids, what would you recommend besides, learning, getting a good meditation practice? Like what would be the next step after that?
After the meditation practice, what makes a mermaid is the watery aura. So, what we want to do is we want to start integrating the water element into ourselves, and that can go for any element. So, I haven't integrated all the elements. I have a really hard time with the earth element, especially. It makes me really nauseated because it's so dense. So, I have to work on that. But after meditation, that's a
Mm-hmm.
lifelong thing. It's not like, oh, we meditated 10 times and we've just reached the end of the road. It's like, I would say it's like being in a
Right.
relationship. You don't just abandon talking to this person or spending time with them or cultivating, the beautiful vision that you have for your life together. You constantly do engage with them. So I choose to meditate all the time with them. Being in or near water
Mm-hmm.
does help, although it's not necessarily a requirement because our bodies are made of water. We always have access to that. But I
Right.
also love to channel them through poetry and art. And whenever you're communicating a vibration, even if it's just drawing a picture or painting, you're channeling. You're in a channeling state. You're beaming that frequency through you.
Right.
So I would recommend, if you want just a gentle, sweet introduction to mermaids, I would just open yourself up, let the mermaid realm know that you would like to communicate with them. And I mean, we all have different missions, so it may not be someone's mission to constantly be engaging, but just show up, let them know that you would like
Right.
to connect, and then see what comes through. You know, maybe you could have like a piece of paper in front of you with some colored pencils and just see if something is inspired. They can communicate in so many ways. And even if you haven't developed certain psychic abilities like, you know, clairaudience or like, oh, I feel this message coming through, I have to write this whole elaborate poem or paragraph,
Right.
usually they'll come through in some form of art because it flows like they do. It comes from the heart and they understand that
Right.
vibration.
Right.
So that's a great way to start.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, and I always love doing just like free writing, like after a meditation, just writing,
Mhm.
just total brain dump, because I feel like once you read it over again, there's like so many little clues that you could put together.
Mhm.
So that's always like a really cool thing to try too, for sure. So what are just some like mermaid misconceptions that you hear and you're just like, oh, that's not what it is? That maybe, maybe the first one that pops in your head that you'd like to kind of clear up.
Yeah, so the first thing that everyone says is, okay, so mermaids, you have to be careful around them. We talked about this a little bit, but it's like, okay, well, do they lure sailors to their death? Will they purposefully call me into another realm
Right.
and then not let me go? And the answer is no, of course not. They usually don't manifest in physical form, like where we can touch them, even if they do look physical to a clairvoyant, you know, someone who's developed the ability to see spiritual beings. But they
Right.
they're always available in a spiritual sense. So whenever we magnetically feel attracted to them, of course, we can leave our bodies and we can get into that egoless state, which sounds really good to be out of
Mhm.
your ego because that's how we channel. I think we kind of put that aside. But if you put it too far aside and you don't know, you know, oh, I'm hungry or I'm cold or I need to go to the bathroom, that can be really bad news. So I would say there's a little
Right.
credence to the be careful with spiritual beings, but mermaids will never intentionally hurt someone. That is completely against their vibration because fundamentally, mermaids are the vibration of unconditional love. Like there's no, this is another aspect I like to talk about with mermaids. Mermaids don't truly bond. So they don't need like a common interest necessarily or a reason to connect with someone. They don't go through all the
Mhm.
rituals that we do to establish friendships and relationships. They just instantly think of someone and they can be at one with that person. They can be aware of how they're feeling, exist as that person exists, and even relive that person's
Mhm.
memories as if they are the mermaid's own. So that's very unique about them. So I know I kind of like dumped a lot of stuff there, but those are
Yeah.
some common misconceptions and strengths and really cool things about
No, that's
mermaids.
awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, there are so many misconceptions. And I think, even if you think like people who are witches, like, again, it's that same thing. Like the movies and everything has just like formed it into this like crazy thing. Disney ruins everything. So
Yeah.
there's,
You know what? We agree on that. Oh my goodness.
they do, they ruin everything. Because,
They really do.
and and that's also some, as we're kids, and we watch all these things and then we're getting conditioned because when we're kids is when we're most open to all those things. Then we grow up and it's like if they would just kind of teach the spiritual part of things, and as we're growing up, then we would be able to like find our purpose and our like job here so much easier, because then we would have to go through this whole patch of, oh, well, who am I? What do I need? What do I do? And like unconditioning ourselves. So I think it's so important to just really pay attention to your intuition, right? And how you are feeling when you are approaching different things or hearing different things or seeing them, depending, like you said, what Claire is a little bit more prominent for you. Now, what advice do you have for people about following their intuition? This is kind of like a question I ask everyone because I always love everyone's advice on it, and I feel like you can't get enough advice on it. So, what is your advice on like intuition and developing it?
Sure. So the first thing for me, especially coming out of like fundamentalism and a toxic environment, is cleaning out your intuition, which sounds really funny, but it's so important to create clarity. So the example I use is it's really unhealthy, but I grew up not eating organic food, not eating healthy stuff, and part of that was a money issue. So I'm not going to fault my
Yeah,
parents for that. You know, those constructs exist in our world and we
right.
have to navigate
I
those
think that's
things.
most of us, though.
Yeah, yeah, and I still eat chocolate, so let's not be ridiculous here. But overall, I try to eat clean,
Right.
but
Yeah, come on now.
yeah, I noticed a big difference though from when I was just eating junk food all the time growing up and now. So back then, if you think of your hunger pangs, sort of like intuition, I was always craving sugar or foods that aren't really foods, like, I don't know, Kraft mac and cheese. I grew up on that. I grew up on like Totino's
Right.
pizza, like, just all the
Swiss
frozen
rolls.
stuff. Yes, and like no vegetables. It was really
Right.
bad. But as I transitioned, and I totally have cheat days. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal, but I do try to take better care of my body. I want to be here for a long time. I want to feel good. I need to get some vegetables in me. I find that I crave healthier things now because I've developed a taste for them. So I think that when it comes to things like intuition and developing any psychic ability, it's about getting rid of the muck. And you can do that through so many ways. You can do Reiki on yourself, you can do meditations, but it's so important to make sure that your intuition is on point and to make sure that you're being drawn to the right things because your intuition will just sort of pick up on the vibration that you're attracting or vibrations that are being emitted around you. So you
Right.
have to have discernment when it comes to that type of thing so that you keep yourself safe and so that you attract the things that you truly want to experience, especially as we develop spiritually. I think that our tastes change over a lifetime because we grow over a lifetime. It's we don't
Right.
stay stagnant. We don't exist in a vacuum. So I know that's not super specific
Right.
because I think it's different for everybody, but in general, I think that's a good rule of thumb to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think too, it's like you said, it's just really being mindful of where you're putting your energy and your attention and how and like what is it that you really want too. I feel like that's really
Hmm.
important too. Like what do you plan on getting out of this? Like what's your end
Right.
game when you are trying to open up all these abilities or even just your intuition as well. So I definitely agree with that. It does make it a lot easier when you really know. Because I mean, if you're going in there to, all right, I'm open to everything, like you said, you're going to be so bombarded and then you're going to shut right
Hmm.
back down. And then you're just right at the beginning. And we don't want that. So
Right.
how can somebody really start working with the water element? Like, what are some good ways to connect with it? If you know, getting in touch with mermaids and maybe working with them and seeing if you have a job with them or whatever. Like, how can you work with that water element? Like, what are some good exercises for that?
Well, one of the exercises in my book is a simple meditation. And long story short, I have the student or someone who's interested put some water in a cup, or they could even sit in a bathtub if they want to. And I have them sit near it or in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically create the best feeling you've ever had in your life, whatever that is, because it's going to look different for everyone. It might be the day you got married, or the day that you
Right.
received your favorite dog, or an accomplishment, something like that, just whatever your highest feeling has been in your entire life, recreate it inside of yourself. And then what you're going to do is you're actually going to beam that energy toward the water because studies show that water responds to vibrations, to sound, and to frequencies. So what that means is we can program it to kind of be a carrier of vibration and intention in some cases. So then the water could be used, say, for healing or something like that. And you can imbue it with countless different things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that people really like that aspect of being able to give something to the water because water is like a mirror. So it's going to kind of reflect back whatever you throw at it. It's going to go where it's directed. So slowly learning to direct your energy towards something for a given purpose is really useful. So that's a really good step. And then another thing I like to say, this is a whole other journey, but I tell people that it's really useful to develop lucid dreaming skills because the mermaids love to connect through dreams. It's so playful and relaxing and it's easy. And you can slip
Mm-hmm.
into lucid dreaming even without a lot of training, but there's many, many books that have helped me to kind of, the whole goal is, we all dream at night, but we need to wake ourselves up to the fact that we are dreaming.
Right.
And when we do, there's so much rich, creative, delicious potential in that. And that's been like a whole character arc
Right.
for me, even outside of mermaids, developing that skill. But when you can do that, you can travel
Hmm.
to any plane. I mean, you could also do this through astral projection, which is where you go to different planes while you're awake, usually not while you're asleep, although you can do it that way as well. But I just love lucid dreaming so much because I know that when I
Hmm.
go to sleep, it's like, have you seen the movie Avatar? It came out in 2009. It's with the blue people.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you know how
Right.
if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. It's amazing. But you know how when the characters go to sleep, they wake up in a new body, which are their avatars, and they can live this whole other life and self-actualize in that world.
Yeah.
That's what I think of, that's what lucid dreaming has. It has so much potential for us to enrich our spiritual selves and connect with these great beings. That's probably one of my favorite ways to interface with the mermaid realm. It's so much fun.
Right. Yeah. And, and I think too, the idea with lucid dreaming too is like, after you practice it, you get, better at it, that you're in control of the whole situation. So
Mhm.
I think that really helps too, because then you don't have to worry about that part of it. And then, like you said, you could just start, really diving into it, and going wherever you need to go, and talking to whatever, being you need to talk to. So I do think that is definitely an awesome way to connect, for sure. Like, I definitely agree with that, for sure. So for people who are maybe a little nervous about just starting to work with elementals in general, what are some great ways that you like to like protect yourself? Because you have mentioned it a couple times. Like, what are some ways that people can do that?
Yeah, so protecting yourself is really important. You want to make sure that you don't go into anything too fast. The thing that I like about the mermaid realm is that it's not like the realm of the salamanders or the fire spirits where you can just sort of, get lost. It's like we have these guardians in the
Mm-hmm.
mermaid realm that do look out for the most part for people who enter it. So what I did was I went to the mermaids and I was like, look, not everyone wants to cultivate a lifelong practice with mermaids, constant meditation, constantly, trying to shield their aura and make sure they're not too attracted to something. What do you have for people who just kind of want
Mm-hmm.
to dip their toe in the water and get a taste? And that's where, in my book, I write about this. That's where they gave me the concept of what they call the playroom. So it's like the outer shell of the mermaid realm. You don't need to go to sleep to visit it. You can just sit down
Okay.
in like a meditative pose and it's basically like you just
Mm-hmm.
imagine yourself going to the mermaid realm and see what opens up to you. And usually it'll just be like a lot of people describe it as a shoreline with a beautiful ocean, and they can go as far as they want into it and they can explore, but it's very easy to walk right back out. There's not the same level of magnetism in this sphere, so you're not going to feel as drawn to stay
Mm-hmm.
long term. I do go more into depth about what it looks like, how to access it. I walk people through a meditation in my book, so I think that that will be a little more helpful if they read the
Okay.
specifics. But there's a specific outer
Yeah.
shell
Awesome.
to the mermaid realm that's specifically created for people to just taste test and make sure that it is for them. So you're going to feel like that euphoric and amazing feeling. It's just not as intense as someone who's going to meditate, on the deeper realms where it's like, okay, this is our work, this is our passion, this is what we do, this is the vibration of this mermaid. This mermaid has such
Right.
strong magnetism. I feel like I'm being sucked into a black hole and I don't know quite how to get out of it because I just want to sit here and stare at it.
Mhm.
So I think that's a much safer way to
Right.
interact. And
Right.
that's why I went to them and I was just like, do you have a safer space for this? And they said, yeah, we do. We can definitely co-create that with
Right.
you because
We're
they
less
understand
intense for a minute here.
it pretty much. Yeah, so I would start with the mermaids when you start meditating with elementals because some of the other
Mhm.
elementals, they will never intentionally hurt you. Why would they do that? There's no point in it. It doesn't do anything for them, but they don't have the
Right.
same degree of empathy and the same understanding of safe spaces and quietude. So I think it's a lot safer to start with the mermaids who do deeply understand what it is to become one with someone else and to understand why it's important that they don't neglect their human form and, just give themselves over to this whole different mission. So I think that they're a really sweet vibration to start with.
Right.
It's very
Mhm.
familial at times. You can interact with different mermaids, and some of them feel almost dolphin-like, like you're in a pod and you're with family. So I think that that's a really safe template to start
I
with, as
love that.
opposed to say just, diving in with a
Yeah.
salamander who doesn't have the same degree of empathy, even if they don't necessarily
Mhm.
wish you harm.
Right. Excuse me, they don't have that like human awareness to them. So they're just
Mhm.
going along doing their thing, like blazing it all up, and they don't even realize that you can't really do that. They're
Right.
like,
It's like
whatever.
It's like, I do have kids and a husband and a job, so I probably need to get back. And they're just like, okay, well, I mean, I exist out of time, so you're gonna have to figure that out for yourself. At least that's kind of how a salamander sees it. But I mean, salamanders also just because it's fun to say, they do have a component to them that will protect people, but it almost seems more hostile. If you want to connect with them, it's like they'll kind of sit there and be like, okay, well, what skills have you developed to be able to work with me? Because I need to know to work with you that you're going to be effective. I don't want to waste my time. So there is that. But if people meditate too much on that realm, it sounds cliche, but the fire element is so intense at times and strong that it can make them very agitated and aggressive. So it's important to maintain balance and just start with the sweeter vibrations first and then kind of work your way up as you feel more confident.
Right, right. And then, then you can switch between the two and go visit some salamanders and then take a break and go back to the mermaids and just like put all that fire out.
Exactly. You got it. Hmm.
Definitely. So when people do connect with mermaids and is do you kind of like get assigned mermaid? Do you have ones that are usually kind of follow you around for your human life, or does it just kind of change, like whoever's around just kind of hops in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it depends on you and what your practice is like. So if you just go into the mermaid realm and you're just like, hey, I kind of like to interface with different beings and, kind of do a round table panel, like, can you introduce me to the water element? Kind of let me meet the chief ambassadors in this realm who want to talk to humans. I think that they
Mhm.
facilitate that. For me personally, though, I've connected deeply with a few. And I do see others at times, but I specifically work with these beings. So, for example, the first mermaid who contacted me is called Isaful, and she is talked about in Franz Bardon, however you want to pronounce it, in his magical occult system of Hermeticism. And I didn't know that at the
Okay.
time, but she revealed herself over time to be that same being. And she rules the oceans with stillness. That's her vibration. And she's really translated the depth of that experience to me and what that can mean, becoming a mirror and becoming so peaceful that anyone in your presence, it could be a president, it could be a political leader, it could just be, an aggressive member of your family.
Mhm.
When you truly become what Isaful is, that person can no longer be that, lower vibration or dark thing because all that they are connected to is that mirror of stillness. So it's almost like existing in the void. It's like, okay, well, there's nothing to fight against. They kind of
Mhm.
lose that sense of, we're at war, I have these things that I want and I will do anything to get it. So that's
Right.
her gift is being so peaceful that she can reflect anything, absorb perhaps in a way the negativity, but she can completely
Mhm.
transmute it by putting someone in a space where they don't even recognize why the silly things they wanted before were important. So I work with Isabel a lot, as you can tell, but I mostly channel her. Most of the mermaid poetry that I beam through is from her, but I work with others as well. So one more
Mhm.
would be the mermaid Amwe. She works with coral reefs and fishes, and I work with her sometimes when I have a question about one of my beta fish or, something like that, or whatever. There's so many
Right.
ways that
Like the
they
general
interact with
stuff.
me. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the
I mean,
everyday
sometimes
stuff.
exactly. And sometimes mermen, they show up too. They'll they're more task oriented, so they'll come and they'll be like, "Hey, You're here in Sedona. There's this creek bed, or there's this little area where tourists have kind of demolished it. It's interfering with the wildlife. It's messing up the flow of the water. Can you go clean it up? Here's where it is. So that's how they'll come to me. But I don't usually sit and meditate with mermen too much. Just I don't know. It doesn't feel as natural to me, just because I think Isabel and I were probably meant to
Right.
work together because our focuses are so similar. But they can come up as they will and let you
Right.
know where you should direct your focus.
Right. So after, do you get kind of like a job from the mermaids after a while? Like, will they give you a job, or do they just give you, like you kind of were saying, like more tasks, like, hey, this is going on here? Or like, do they let you know, like, we connected with you because of this? Or is it just something that it's probably happened over many lifetimes, so it's just a part of you?
It can be both, actually. I think that they can sense. So with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of environmental scientists or eco warriors, if you want to think of them like that, I do see, the person may not be sitting there like, oh, I'm channeling a mermaid. They may not know, but the mermaids can kind of influence gently their thinking, their and their emotions to go toward areas
Mm-hmm.
that need assistance. So that's where I see that type of thing. But with someone like me who is meant to work with the water element, that's just part of my mission in this life. They will come up and be like, okay, this is part of your mission. We're going to come alongside of you and help you. Or another mermaid I know is a healer. She's very beautiful healer. It's incredible. She does Reiki. She does a little bit of Western practice as well. She's certified, has her master's degree, licensed, all that great stuff. And they come alongside of her to work with her
Mm-hmm.
clients specifically through her career in that way. And then another mermaid is a paleontologist. And I love paleontology as well, but she's a professional paleontologist. And they come up to her and they kind of push her toward things and discoveries that she might not otherwise come into contact with. And they can kind of help them beam the
Mm-hmm.
messages of those extinct creatures to her through her art in ways that are truly unique and revolutionary. They haven't quite been done like this before. So there's so many ways it can manifest. I'm just kind of
Right.
rambling on because it's one of those things where it's like I can't
No,
just put a
that's
fine point on it, but
yeah,
it's just so cool all the different ways that they come through.
right.
So,
Right, right. No, and that's good to know too, because people don't know those things. So know it, when you're, telling us and letting us know, then I think it also helps people to form better questions. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Does that make sense? Like, you
yeah.
once they're like, oh, okay, so it's not as specific, but let me go this way with it. So when you decided to write a book, like, how did that come about? Was it something you channeled? Did they give you a message, or you're like, I'm just going to start writing a book?
Yeah, so okay, I never truly thought that this would be a book. I always kind of knew eventually that I would be an author in this life. Even people in high school would tell me, "Oh, you're going to be an author one day." But I always thought that my first book would be like a sci-fi fiction or something. So I sat down one night and I was just thinking, I used to have a really popular Tumblr, and people would ask me the same questions, kind of over and over because they were really good questions and it's things people want to know about the mermaid realm. So I sat down, it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon one day, and I was just like, I need to put this like into a PDF or something. So I get obsessive with things because I'm autistic and I go for it when I go for something. So I sat down, it was like 4 or 5 p.m.
Right.
I just started writing and it was like channeling because I kind of knew what I was saying at certain times and then I kind of didn't at others. I just typed and I typed really fast too. So I typed from 4 in the afternoon all the way like until 5, 6, 7 the next morning, like just straight through the night. I didn't stop. And I did add on a couple of
Wow.
chapters later, that were recommended for clarity. And, I had to look up some
Mhm.
mermaid resources I didn't just know off the top of my head. But 80% of the book was typed in a night.
Right.
It just came through. It was meant to be. And then I sent it to a friend, William Mistley. He pioneered mermaid research. I always want to mention his name because he has incredible books on mermaids and
Mhm.
elementals as well. And he basically sent it
Yeah,
to
and
one
he
of his
did the
publishers.
forward on it, right?
Yes, he did. He's amazing.
Okay.
He's done this for
Yeah,
decades. I
he
highly
did that.
recommend
Yeah.
his
Okay.
work. Yep. So he actually gave it to one of his publisher friends, and they were
Awesome.
just like, "Look, this needs to be published. Let's move forward with this." So I was so blessed and fortunate to have that experience, but it was just one of those things where it's like it fell into place and it's meant to be. It was an incredible experience, and it floored me
Yeah.
when I heard that someone wanted to publish it because I was like, "Oh, well, I was just going to kind of put this out maybe as a PDF." but nowhere near as many people would have seen it. So.
Right. No, that's so fantastic. It's awesome. And you do cover a lot. I love how you also add where to purchase mermaid tails. I think that's amazing.
It's so
I
much
actually
fun.
bought one for my niece last summer.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I love mermaid tails. It's a whole physical sport outside of anything spiritual. So you can swim with a mermaid tail and just have fun. You know, it's great physical exercise, let me tell you. It's amazing. But I wanted to put that
Yeah,
in
it's
there
harder
because
than
I
you
don't want
think
to
it
complete.
is.
It is. You have to like start with your shoulders and do this whole roll, and you know, it takes
Right.
practice, but once you've got it,
It's
it's
like a
just
whole
like,
thing.
oh, it's amazing. But I wanted to ground in
Right.
some way the physical mermaid experience because people want the mermaids, they want the tails. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't had an incredible time doing it. It's so much fun to get into a tank or into the ocean and go around with your tail as well. So I wanted to also push forward the incredible mermaid artists and people who have started
Hmm.
grounding and anchoring their vibration in the physical and then put the spiritual alongside it so we kind of get the best of both worlds.
Right. And it's like also just tapping into that inner child too. And I think that's always a good idea for anything that you're doing because again, it's just going back to that innocence and also, you can go back and connect with your inner child to kind of clear away all that muck like you said that you want to connect with these beings but you have all this crap hanging around so by connecting with your inner child and just having some fun, I mean that's never a bad thing, right?
Absolutely. And the mermaids are so innocent and they have this pure receptivity, you know, about them. They have that vibration of they're very wise, but at the same time, it's just like you're in the presence of this pure child who doesn't have the malice or the, you know, even just the tiredness that humans develop. You know, we all do, you know, we're in physical bodies. We get tired
Hmm.
sometimes or drained and we have to replenish somehow. So it's so good to be in that space, and I love that you picked up on the innocent and the sweetness of the mermaid realm because that's one of its most attractive qualities and one of the things that I think makes it such a beautiful and wholesome and just safe experience. It's amazing.
Right, right. And and I think I was always like the kid that was pretending to be a mermaid where whenever I was in water, I was pretending to be a mermaid. And like I had the whole royal court. I had a whole situation going on in my brain. But
Oh,
like for me, I had a really crappy childhood too. So I do feel that mermaid energy, it really does call to people who kind of missed out on that and they're like, come play with us. Like you can still do all your adult things, but you can still get that fun and have that make that connection between the spiritual and the fun part of it, for sure, definitely. So
absolutely.
now do you have any other
Mhm.
projects in the works right now?
Yeah, so I write poetry as well. I actually do have a completed poetry book, which is a lot of elemental channelings. I don't know if it'll be published as a book because poetry is really challenging to get published, especially if it's not Insta poetry, you know, like Instagram poetry, and mine is not. But if it's
Right.
not, it's okay because I'm going to submit it to different magazines, journals. I've been so focused on getting this book out there, I haven't really worked on it. But separately from that, I have
Mm-hmm.
also written about 170 pages of a more human biography, and it comes through the lens of purity culture, sexuality, coming into spirituality as you come out of all of that stuff, and kind of grounding into who we were meant
Right.
to be versus who maybe the people in our childhoods wanted us to be. So I don't know when that'll come out. I don't even know who will publish it. Inner Traditions might want it as well, or they might not. So I'll just kind of have to feel that out and you
Right.
know, refine it and sculpt it in the next few months and just see what happens. But I do want to get my more human story out there because that's so relatable to people in spirituality, especially for those who maybe came out of a religious organization that, you know, fine in and of itself if that's what someone wants to do. But it's like, okay, well, I kind of feel like the spiritual thing means something, but it was distorted maybe for me. So how do I come to terms with that?
Right.
So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Right.
I don't know when it'll be done. I don't have any deadlines, but it's just in the
Mm-hmm.
flow. That's part of the process, and we'll just see what comes next. Hopefully, I can write a lot
Yeah,
more mermaid books.
that sounds awesome. Yeah, no, definitely. Now, where can everyone find you if they want to kind of keep in touch and see what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me at the sedonamermaid.com. So that's a great place to go. I just started it a few months ago, so I don't have that many blog posts up or,
Mhm.
poetry entries yet, even though I'm going to add some more. So just be patient with me. It's getting up there, but my story's up there. I have art, photography, things that I want to inspire, people to connect with the frequency of mermaids and elementals. So that's in the works
Mhm.
as well. But I actually just started another blog. This is more of like a human interest thing called geekgirlunderworld.com. If you want to check it out, I just started it a few weeks ago. And I just
Ooh,
basically talk about special interests like
yeah.
autism. And I'm going to do a post on pterosaurs. I did a post on um, curating your own home library, just, geeky, nerdy things that I'm into. So that way we kind of get the spiritual and the human balance.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, that sounds fun. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's awesome. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, thank you for coming on with us today. Really appreciate it. And thanks for just letting, go with the flow. So
Absolutely. That's what we do.
definitely everybody intertradition. Yes, it is very true. That is exactly what we do. So this is published by Intertraditions, and you can get this on their website. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it all the places where you buy your books and decks and all of that. So be sure to check it out. And if you do get it, go ahead and take a picture, tag it, write a review, all of those things, because they are so helpful for authors. And it really helps to just push the book so more people can see it and really experience it and everything. So thank you so much, Al. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on, and good luck on all your adventures.
Thank you so much. This was a beautiful co-creation, and I loved being part of your show. So thank you so much for having me here.
All right. No problem. Thank you. Bye.